Alan doesn't want to travel with me anymore. He thinks I'm too old.
Play the theme music. Hello and welcome to this episode of Tripology. I'm Alan and I'm here with the ever antiquated Adam.
After sleeping in this car, Alan, I have developed a lower back complaint that I don't care for.
Your back is aging.
My whole body's aging. I feel like I've run a marathon every day when I wake up.
Yeah, it is aging, mate. You have increased in age during this trip in a significant way. But I will say this. I want to preface this episode where we talk about your age a little bit by saying almost on a daily basis, people go up to you and tell you how young you look.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that. Of course I do. I would rather look younger than I am, especially if I am now old. I had my 35th birthday on this trip just a few days ago. Is that a milestone?
I think 35 is a milestone, yeah. It's the point where I think you really have to accept that you've stopped peaking and now will enter into a decline.
Or take up professional cycling, because a lot of the riders do peak around their mid-30s.
Yeah, same with mixed martial arts, sports that I follow. About 35, you're like, okay, now you've physically peaked and you've got the mental strength of someone who's a little bit older.
Okay.
Rapid decline after 35.
So what if I came to you and I said, Alan, I've been thinking a lot about my age. I'm going to put the podcast on the back burner and I'm going to take up mixed martial arts.
I mean, I would be disappointed because I basically think you have very little future in mixed martial arts starting at 35, whereas the podcast, I think, is going from strength to strength.
Yeah, nice one. I don't feel as old as 35, and I was told when I was very young by a friend of mine. It was actually his father. We were having a group discussion about getting old, and his dad said, "You do realise that you won't ever feel that much older than your late 20s." But your body starts to decline.
Yeah.
And when people do say you look a lot younger than you are, quite often their eyebrows nearly ping off their forehead, don't they?
When you tell them your age.
When I say I'm 35, and they go, what? You look 23 we had the other day.
Yeah, and it's exacerbated, I think, by the fact that you travel with me, a bearded man who has frankly let life beat him down a little bit over the last few years. So I think oftentimes it's like, you look young, you're a beautiful man.
Thank you so much.
Clean shaven, you look almost like you're about to graduate. But when you're hanging out with me, especially if I'm feeling a bit miserable and morose, and I've let my beard go a little bit longer.
You think the stark contrast is what? Because very rarely, if ever actually, has someone thought that you were younger than me.
I don't think it's ever happened. But you know what they say? They say men age like fine wine.
Right.
So when I hear, oh, Alan, you look older than Adam, I hear, Alan, you are,
my goodness,
very handsome. And I let that carry me to the next chapter of my life.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to be. Well, we thought that this episode, it'd probably be quite a good time, as I have just turned 35, and as society deems that too old to travel, we thought it could be quite a good opportunity to discuss what it is like to travel as a 35-year-old and whether, in fact, that's correct.
Yeah, I'd like to do that. And then in the back half of the episode, we're going to, part ways.
I know.
So we'll discuss that a little bit later. But right now, you want to discuss your age a little bit. Would you like to do that in the form of an article?
Yeah. I think that's a good place, good jumping off point.
There you go.
So this article is, we're going to plug it. It's nice. We'll put the link in the description as well. It's on TripSavvy.
Nice. A really great website.
We know it. We've heard of it.
Yeah.
And the title of the article is What I Learned from Backpacking as a 40-something.
Okay, so you're trying to get ahead of it a little bit.
I mean, if this guy feels good about it, what have I got to worry about? Okay,
well, have you been worried? Because I didn't really sense that when you turned 35. I thought we had a nice day. I got you some lovely gifts.
The gifts were amazing, by the way, guys. And I'm a little bit ashamed to admit it. You bought me some really practical gifts that I should have already owned.
Well, that's, I think, the best type of present.
Yeah, you're right. So you very thoughtfully bought me a power bank.
Yep.
I know the listener's probably thinking he's travelling without a power bank. That's crazy. And you also got me a lovely little day bag that folds down into the size of a tennis ball, roughly.
Yeah, maybe a tennis ball.
Yeah, a little day sack.
Green.
10 litres, fits the laptop and all the essentials. fantastic. And then you got me a universal adapter that fits pretty much every plug on the planet.
Yeah, I think they were good, like a sort of a travel kit.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to
My
ask...
first travel kit.
Yeah, if you were to ask a backpacker what are 3 essential items you would take with you, those might be in there.
Yeah, the most shocking things that you don't own.
But thanks very much. Loved them.
But you had a good day on your birthday, not too psychologically disruptive, knowing that you are now 35.
Yeah, that was fine. I knew it was coming, and, you know, I've had so many birthdays now. Old people say that, don't they?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just another day. It's just another day. But we were in Oman together, and that was cool.
You had a nice day.
Yeah, it was really good. But I just think at the age of 35, maybe what makes it worse is not only getting old, not only realising that your body is in decline and you are getting a little bit achy where you previously weren't, but it's also the societal pressure of not having lived a conventional life up until this point.
Yeah. So do you feel like you're behind other people who have lived more conventional lives? Or do you feel like, actually, you know, at 35, you're very much walking up the path towards the door of 40.
Yeah.
But I think the kind of life you've lived, you've sort of effed off the path altogether, and you're like somewhere over in the bushes in the garden.
Yeah, I do agree with it. I do think that it would be more difficult for me psychologically if everyone around me who was my own age wasn't saying things like, oh my God, your life sounds fantastic. I wish I could do what you do. So that kind of makes me feel like maybe I am on the right path. Have we cheated? Have we cheated life?
I mean, I've always said travel is the cheat codes to existence, and your youthful complexion is evidence of that. Let's continue with the article.
Let's crack on. So what I learned from backpacking as a 40-something, this is written by Greg Rogers, published way back in 2020.
Fan of the pod.
You'll be able to find it. But what I really like is one of the excerpts I'll read is, Greg says, while backpacking, you quickly learn how Benjamin Franklin's claim, time is money, isn't true. If it were, we would all be racing our Learjets to the next island. Instead, we more often end up herniating discs on a bus that predates the Korean War. No, in fact, time is time, and backpackers of all ages are blessed with copious amounts of it. If you've just quit a corporate job for the less lucrative pursuit of passport stamps, you're going to feel like you've never had so much time in your life.
Greg there, basically, I mean, causing Ben Franklin to roll several times in his grave with that powerful, powerful statement.
I know, mate, and I sort of feel great about that, because time is something you don't often have a lot of if you are living that Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 conventional lifestyle, going to the same supermarket every Saturday to do the grocery shop, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then now I just feel like I've lived, well, you said actually, let's touch on what you said to me yesterday. You said you've lived 5 lifetimes. You've lived longer than other people your own age.
Yes. So, yeah, I'd love to expand on that, because it's not funny, but it's true. So sometimes we can do that on the podcast, because I think that's true in 2 different ways.
Yeah.
In the metaphorical sense, I think by exposing yourself to so many different cultures, meeting so many people, doing so many things, you're essentially as wise as someone who's lived several more decades than you actually have.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
If you work in a corporate job in an office, or, you know, you're doing anything really that's not what you're doing, you've met so many fewer people than you have.
Yeah, definitely. And your life is so much more predictable. You interact with the same people over and over again in the same environments. So I think because of that exposure, and also learning as well, you just learn so many more things. What we were talking the other day about a country that you had knowledge of. It was the fact that some of Egypt is in Asia, right?
Yeah. It's a transcontinental country.
Yeah, and the reason you know that, you said, is just because you've explored it at length. And that kind of stuff is almost through osmosis, right? You learn so much when you're on the road. And I'm not saying that people that don't live this type of life don't learn in other areas, but if you're just doing the same thing over and over again for the same amount of time, let's say a decade or 15 years, you're bound to learn less, aren't you?
Well, that's it. You might meet people who have special interests in, like, oh, I'm really interested in geography, so they know more than us about geography. Or, oh, I'm really interested in religion, so they know more about religion. But never will they have such a breadth of knowledge that happens if you end up, like, you know about Islam now because you've been in Pakistan, you've been in Oman. I know about Egypt because I've been there. You end up by osmosis learning about all these places.
Yeah, it's wicked. I don't think that at the age of 35 I feel as old as I thought I would feel. Do you think I behave in a way that's much older to you?
I've always just sort of thought of us as being the same age, really.
Yeah.
I mean, you are, in fact, 5 years older than me.
I know, it's a
which is
lot.
wild to look at us.
Would that mean that I would have left school roughly the same time as you joined it if we were talking about a UK secondary school? Yeah, that's
Which
crazy.
is really crazy. And you're older than my brother as well.
Right.
And he very much fits the bill of an older brother in my head.
Yeah, sure.
Whereas me and you are very much like, oh, you're just my best mate. We're like the same.
Yeah, I think you're far more mature than most other 30-year-olds I've met, for sure.
I've just always sort of rejected the concept of age in anything other than, obviously, like you're allowed to do more things and get more freedom as you're older. But in terms of like looking forward, like when I was 21, I like lived in a house with a 40-year-old, and he was my best mate in Australia.
Yeah, cool.
And I never really thought of it like that. But I just want to touch on what I was saying earlier, because I said the metaphorical way in which you've lived several lifetimes is that you've been exposed to lots of different things. But there's a literal scientific way in which that's true as well.
Right.
And that's that you store memories differently if the memories are varied.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So if you've spent a week sat in a very linear location for 8 hours and then gone home for a bit and then, like a 9-to-5 job, that literally feels and is in some sense, by the method which you stored it in your brain, a shorter amount of time than if you spent that week doing a bunch of different things.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting.
Time is really this relative concept, this relative force. If you spend a year spending every day having novel activities, looking back on that year, even though it might have flown by because you've had fun, looking back on that year, it will feel like a long ass time because you've got all these different long-term memories that have been stored.
I mean, people do often say to us, how have you managed to fit so much in? You've already lived a few lives already. And I do kind of think about that when I do get a little bit down. I suppose the other thing that exacerbates the feeling, sometimes you get bogged down about being 35 and entering a hostel and everyone else is like 15 years younger than you in some cases.
Yeah.
But I would say to anyone listening to this, definitely still travel and even backpack, which I think is what we're specifically talking about right now. Can you backpack in your 30s? Absolutely, because you just end up gravitating towards people who are of a similar maturity, or they have the same interests as you, or they are in fact the same age. You don't necessarily go hanging around at the age of 35 with 18-year-olds who just want to go out on the piss. So, I would say I feel pretty good. I'm actually more excited about the future and all my travel objectives than I ever have been, I think.
That's a really beautiful thing. I think it might be one of the most common emails we get to the show.
Yeah.
You can send us an email, tripologypodcast@gmail.com, or head to our website, tripologypodcast.com.
Woohoo!
A lot of people say, hey, listen, I love the show, but I'm feeling like I'm a little bit too old for this now.
Yeah.
And my answer to that is we have connected on this trip even with people who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s.
Yeah.
You meet cool people all the time. Backpacking has a weird reputation as being for young people in some sense. I personally think that could not be further from the truth. And it's another example of society trying to manipulate kind of the status quo. It's like, oh, travel when you're 19, sure, we'll let you do that, but once it's out of your system, you better fucking go back to your home country and get a job, because otherwise, you'll be 30 and what are you going to do? You're not going to be able to get a house and a relationship and all that. It's bollocks. It's not true.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said that people who try and lay the foundations in their 20s and 30s in the hope that they have a retirement plan by the time they're 65 or whatever, I do think that is a good idea to have one eye on the future for sure. But it is also mental to live what are probably the best years of your life.
Yeah.
In the hope that you A, reach the age of 65, and B, you're not going to be traveling when you're 65. It's going to be a different you, a different world. I would discourage people from kicking their travels down the road, definitely. But I do just want to finish off this section by talking about one guy I met earlier this year. When I was in Lisbon, I was in this wicked little bar where they were serving local food, and I ended up sitting next to this guy from the UK at the bar, and he was sat there with his wife, and we had a really interesting conversation. He told me he was an ex-marksman. in the military.
All right.
He went to what was that school for the military? Sandhurst.
Yeah.
And super nice guy, very interesting, very well spoken, is smart as well. He was 42. And I was then just 34, sprightly 34.
Yeah.
And I told him about the podcast. I told him about traveling, why I was in Lisbon, all this kind of stuff, that I'd just been living in Canada, etc., etc. He said, that's really cool. But what I think you should do, and I'm talking of a man of experience, I travelled a lot when I was young as well. I think that you should focus not on what you want at this age, but on what most people want. And that is a stable job with a mortgage and a family. And I was so blown away.
What did you mean by that?
I'm just living an unconventional lifestyle. He told me he had also done that at a slightly younger age, in his early 20s.
Yeah.
But now that he's 42, he wishes that he had opted for the more conventional lifestyle and now regrets sort of traveling in his 20s and pushing that further down the road. So he said, just because you don't want it now, I can almost guarantee you when you reach my age, you will have wished that you had gone for that.
What do you feel about that?
I do think it's bollocks, because I think that I can have my cake and eat it. And whether that's completely deluded, I don't know. But I don't ever want to stop traveling, because I think it makes me a better person. It's the thing I've fallen in love with. It helps me learn the things I want to learn in the way I want to learn them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a really tough one. It didn't fall on deaf ears. I did take his words seriously, and it really made me think for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Because of the way he said it, with the conviction and the fact that he had travelled a lot previously, it was a bit shocking that he said that. He felt comfortable saying that.
Yeah, well, we live in a world where everyone's opinions and stuff are somewhat validated, and we like to say, oh, that's interesting, I'll take that on board. But the problem is that and whether you've bought this or not, we have all been sold the lie that there's always time when you're older.
Yeah.
But now you need to buckle down. You need to invest in the economy. You need to do this. But the problem is, whose economy are you investing in? The Monopoly board does not work for the players who haven't got the capital at the start. And the fact is, travel and experience is all you have in life. You have a life that you can exist in and move through. And once that is over, it's my belief that is over.
Sure, yeah.
You have one opportunity to do what you want. And sure, you know, you might be able to find contentment and fulfillment by getting a mortgage and doing all that stuff. And some people, that makes them happy.
Yeah.
And if that is what makes you happy, then absolutely pursue it. But if it's not what makes you happy, don't do it because someone else wants you to.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, that's exactly how I felt.
Complete pursuit of your own happiness is the only thing that matters. And if you have an inkling that it's going to be travel that makes you happy, as opposed to the mortgage, I mean, that is all you need to focus on. Do what you think makes you happy. Yeah.
And I know, because of the last 10 years, that living around the world is what makes me happy. Long may it continue.
And I actually don't think that's selfish. People going, oh, it might make me happy, but what about this? What about that? What about that? Trust me, when you're happy, everyone in your life benefits. It really does. Because you have more cup left to pour into other people's vessels. You know?
Yeah, nice one.
And with that, we'll go on a brief meditation break. Adam, you know I love backpacking, but my goodness, it can be stressful.
Well, that's why we've partnered with Journey.
They're an innovative company that have taken all the stress out of planning an adventure.
All you have to do is fill in a brief questionnaire letting them know your travel preferences.
Hot weather, mountains or beaches, good food.
Give them that information, and within 24 hours, you'll receive a trip proposal.
And that's going to give you some hints about your potential adventure.
But the final destination remains a complete surprise until the day you arrive at the airport.
That way, you've got all the spontaneity of a classic Tripology adventure, but without all of that planning stress.
So go and fill out the Journey questionnaire. We love what they're doing. Support them, support us. There's a link in the description.
Go and click on it. Like time moving forward to a relativistic infinity, allow your conscious mind to return into your brain as we all get a little bit older. You know, now is the youngest we'll ever be, even moving through this podcast.
Yeah, I am now slightly older than I was at the beginning of the episode.
Yeah.
But that's fine. I've just got to accept that. I am looking forward to the next few months, mate. I am, although it will be without you by my side.
It will be, Adam, because the tripological cast of you and I, we're parting ways, perhaps briefly.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, we're in control of that, luckily. We've set this thing up.
Yeah.
We've got relative freedom, I think. We're very lucky that we can sort of converge. Whatever we're doing, we're more than happy to fly in or take a 24-hour bus to the next town.
Well, this has been the third season of Tripology, this period of time where we're together. And I very much suspect that the next episode will be the first of the fourth season when we are separate once more.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
And I think what's interesting about that is, we've done it all now. We've set up this podcast. It's going to be a dawn of a lot of new Tripological content because we've got exciting sponsors.
Yeah.
We've got a website, tripologypodcast.com. We've got blogs. We've got Rice for Breakfast. We've got Tales of a Trip. We've got the Hostel Common Room where people can write in questions for us. It's all an exciting jumping off point for us to become the best travel podcast on the internet.
We've really built out the pod and we've started adding things, bolting things on. It's starting to take shape, isn't it? It's taken us nearly 2 years to get to where we are. But we're having a lot of fun, and thank goodness we're having so much fun travelling together, because I think it's going to be a regular occurrence in the future.
It was important, isn't it? Because imagine if we didn't, then the podcast would be remote forever. And I think now us being together is something the audience can look forward to.
Yeah.
But trust me, the remote podcast is going to be really, really interesting, because although we won't have stories that where we deal with them together, we'll have separate stories in different locations. We can deal with them both. We can catch up. What I'm looking forward to is just catching up with you once a week, calling you up, doing the pod, discussing what we're both doing.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, definitely.
What are you doing?
I am going to India tonight, actually, flying to India. Yeah, back to Mumbai, where I'll spend a few weeks at the least, travelling around Rajasthan, somewhere that you've already been, doing another road trip, not with you and not in this car, which is a shame. But looking forward to exploring that region. It was way too hot for us to do it when we were there, wasn't it, in India, in that sort of area, the desert?
Yeah, and I'm excited for you to do that, because I got a head start in India and got to see a lot of stuff that we didn't see together, and I think it's an amazing country. I think you'll really enjoy it.
Rajasthan's a good way to spend the last month or two of my visa, would you say?
I mean, there's so much to do in Rajasthan, but there's also so much to do, if you head east, Varanasi, Bodh Gaya, those places.
I've still not been to Kerala either, so
exactly. There's a lot to do, mate.
Keep a month for that as well. I'm looking forward to being back in India, in Indian culture, with Indian people, eating Indian food. I don't think it's ever a country. I really have a strong feeling about India. I don't think it's ever a country that I'm not going to want to go to. So, I feel very fortunate indeed. And you are off to, drum roll.
Yeah, tonight as well. We've actually got a flight very, very similar, within sort of 10 minutes of each other.
7 minutes apart, yeah.
I am flying to Baku.
Wow.
Azerbaijan.
One of my favourite words.
Spend a little bit of time there, and then I'm going to hang out in Tbilisi, Armenia, and then I'm going to head slowly toward the UK, where I'm going to spend Christmas with my family.
Very, very cool.
So if any fans of the pod, fanatics, want to intercept me at some point along the way, you know my trajectory. I had a bit of a foible last night, mate, and maybe it's worth sharing this on the podcast, because I pride myself on taking a fast and loose approach to travel. I like to wing it a little bit, but I do sometimes something slip through the net.
Overlooked something, didn't you? There was an oversight, as they like to say in the corporate world.
Yeah, so well, actually, in this case, I was really proactive, because I remember saying to you in a coffee shop in Muscat about 2 weeks ago, I said, mate, do you know that you're visa-free for Georgia?
Yeah, result?
For 1 year as a UK citizen. You get 1 year on arrival, which is amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And that maybe led you down the wrong path, unfortunately.
Well, I thought, that's amazing, man. And then I even checked, but I'm flying via Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
Let me check. Have I got visa on arrival there? Yes, you do. No problem. No transit visa required.
Cool.
What I neglected to do is, because it was cheaper to fly to Baku in Azerbaijan, and then I was going to spend 10 days in Baku as sort of like a forethought, and then go to Tbilisi from there.
Yeah.
I basically just forgot that I was doing that.
Nothing against Azerbaijan. Nothing against Baku.
No, I'm excited, if anything, about Baku and Azerbaijan. But in my head, I was like, I was going to Tbilisi.
Yeah, sure.
I checked the visa. I thought, that's amazing. Frankly, Azerbaijan and Georgia are so close to each other, surely. Anyway.
There are bilateral agreements that are going to benefit the UK citizens, surely.
Yeah.
Lured you in.
I paid £1 for an automatic check-in.
Right.
Which I thought was a good deal, that.
Yeah. Half a real.
I got an email last night, and it said, your check-in's failed.
Oh dear.
Logged on. You've not uploaded the necessary visa documentation for your destination.
Dear.
It was at that point that I Googled it, and it turns out that I needed a visa for Baku, and it takes 3 working days to get a visa for Baku.
Which you don't have.
I'm leaving tonight. So I had to pay for an urgent visa, which is done in 3 hours.
A dent in the old budget.
Well, $25 will buy you a Baku visa.
Right.
An Azerbaijani visa.
Yeah. An e-visa, right?
$60 for the urgent one.
Ouch. That is a sting for sure. However, is the process itself pretty straightforward?
Very easy. Took me less than 5 minutes. But I remember, when you're like stung by something and you're upset and like you're like a little bit moody about it.
Yeah.
And you said, "Oh mate, don't worry about it, lesson learned." And I went, "Well, I don't know what the lesson that I'm supposed to learn is." Apart from obviously check the visa requirements of the country that you're visiting before you go there. The lesson was very obvious.
Yeah, I just let that slide. Maybe I should have kept my mouth shut. I don't know. But it was late, wasn't it? And I could see you were beating yourself up. It wasn't just the fact that you had something cumbersome to do late at night. It was also eating away at you, that you, as an experienced traveller, had forgotten to look at the visa requirements of the country you were now going to.
And also annoying that I'd been so stringent checking the visa requirements of the next country I was going to after that fact.
Totally.
I even looked up the train times from Baku to Tbilisi.
So you got your visa now. It's all square. You can go in. You're going to walk sort of loud and proud through passport control.
Well, I mean, it's difficult. Once you do an oversight like that, it's then difficult to know whether you've made other oversights.
Oh, okay.
My
so
mind
there's an element
starts
of doubt that
working.
sets in.
I think so, because I
Have you booked your flight to Baku? Have you at least got a flight?
Yeah, well, I don't know anything anymore, because when you do an oversight like that as an experienced traveller, it's a bit like, I don't want to compare myself to football legend Tom Brady.
Right.
It's a bit like him fumbling a pass, and then he's lost confidence in the next play. So
it's still the greatest of all time.
It's a bit like Carlos Alcaraz sort of throwing up a ball to serve, and he ends up hitting himself in the nuts with his own racket or something,
No, I think you're going to be fine, mate. What is there to do in Baku? Have you done much research on what there is to do in the city?
Done a little bit. There's an old bit of the city. There's a couple of museums I'd like to visit. And then there's another town, which is about 4 hours away by drive. There's a bit of a mountainous region to do some hiking.
That'd be really cool.
I've been told,
yeah,
Azerbaijan, you can pretty much understand and get a full sense of the country more than maybe even a local in about 10 days.
That's so funny. The walking tour just of a morning, and then you feel like you've lived there for years. Maybe.
Yeah, I am going there for a short amount of time, but I think if you were going to visit a country for 10 days, I think Azerbaijan's probably a good one to get a nice sense within 10 days. A lot of people say 10 days is a good time to visit.
Yeah, good. And it's also quite obscure, isn't it?
Quite obscure.
You don't meet many people who have been to Azerbaijan.
Azerbaijan, when I was growing up, was sort of a buzzword that posh kids used to sort of mean the middle of nowhere.
Really?
Yeah.
Not like Timbuktu?
Oh, where's that? Yeah, a bit like Timbuktu. Where's that from? Azerbaijan? Yeah.
Well, they couldn't point to Azerbaijan on a map, I can guarantee it.
Definitely not. No,
I'm not sure I can either.
One of the more complicated sounding countries.
Azerbaijan, yeah. What's the food doing over there? Do you know?
No idea. No, it's a transcontinental country, of course. Yeah. Asia and Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine...
Influenced by both?
I hope so.
That'd be really interesting. I look forward. You're right to... Obviously, rice for breakfast, I will be consuming a lot of food and drink when I'm in India. There won't be any scarcity of content, but I would be really interested if you could take some pictures and, have some decent meals, some typical traditional Azerbaijani food.
Yeah, well, I'm just looking forward to sharing Azerbaijani and then Georgian and then Armenian culture with the listening audience.
The Georgian stuff's really going to interest me. I'm going to be very jealous, actually, because as you know, I am very interested in wine.
Yeah.
Worked in wine for a while, and that is where some people say wine was invented as we know it today.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing. So I'm living in an apartment in Tbilisi with a piano as well. So if you end up going to our Instagram page and it's sort of me live streaming drunken wine-fueled piano sonatas.
Yeah. I think keep your eye out for this, and I might be wrong, so don't quote me on it. However, I think the Georgians make a lot of their wine in amphora, which are clay pots that they also submerge into the earth.
I mean, could we be more excited, Adam?
That'd be really, really interesting. I'll be so jealous, I might just have to book a flight. And now I know, you've just told me that you get a year for free as a UK citizen. I mean, why wouldn't I?
I would like you to book a flight.
Yeah,
I would
cool.
nothing would make me happier than if you said, Alan, I've realised now that what I like isn't actually travelling. What I like is you.
I've aged, I feel like I've aged 10 years. Now you're not there.
Yeah, I'm very much your Dorian Gray. I'm sort of withering in your presence as you get younger and younger. And with that, I mean, my goodness, we've got to give this car back. So it was goodbye to Bushy.
Mm-hmm.
Goodbye to you, the listening audience. And we'll see you next week for a remote episode. Well, I mean, that's exciting stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, we're still going to do a cheeky little Patreon. Have we got time for that?
Yep, let's do a Patreon. If you want to hear that, you go to patreon.com/Tropology Podcast. There's bonus content, like 15 minutes after every episode. The episodes come out 24 hours early. There's audio-only recordings that we've made specially for you. Things get a bit saucy sometimes. Or you can go to tropologypodcast.com, where there's all sorts of additional stuff for you to explore there.
Thanks.
We'll see you on the flip side, guys.
Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you there.
Bye.